everyone, and welcome back to my channel. This is Natalie Shelton with ReThink Fabulous. For today's project, I'll be using this book that I found at a thrift store. So I'll just be using my cutting blade to cut a strip down the front. I want to release the hardcover from this book. And I'll do that to the front and the back of the book. And here I'm just taking out the inner part and trying to be very careful not to rip the paper that was attached. And here you can see I have the hardcover completely taken off, and I'll be using it for another project. I'm now just going to take a couple of the front pages off so that now I have one full page of just the book writing. And then I'm going to trim off all the extra paper that was attached. And now I have a clean canvas to start working with. Now I just want to go back to that piece of paper that was attached to the spine of the book and glue it down with my glue gun. Now if your paper happened to rip or there was no paper there, you can use any scrapbooking paper or brown paper from the Dollar Tree. So I found this adorable bunny on Pinterest. It's a free printable, and I just printed it out, and I'm just going to cut it completely out around the edges. And here's that adorable bunny all cut out. Now this is something fun that I played around with. I took some of the Reynolds press and seal plastic, and I used a piece of painter's drop cloth, and I tore off a piece of the press and seal, and I put it over the top of my fabric with the sticky side down. And I just pressed it really good into the fabric. Once I got it pressed into the fabric, I took my paper bunny and placed it on top of the plastic. And then I tore off another sheet of the press and seal plastic, and with the sticky side down, I pressed it onto the paper bunny. Now I'm going to use just a piece of paper. This is just one of the book pages that I tore out, and taking my iron on high heat with no steam, I just ran the iron over the top of the paper. What's happening is the plastic underneath is melting, placing a covering over the bunny and the fabric. So this process is kind of like laminating. Now I'm going to slowly start peeling the paper off. And if you find that the paper is kind of stuck to the plastic, it's not a big deal. You just rip as much of the paper off as you can. Now if your plastic starts to come up a little bit, just take your iron and go over the top of the paper, and it'll melt that plastic right back down. And then I'm going to continue to get as much paper off as I can. Now for all that extra paper that's stuck on there, I'm just going to take a little bit of water and put it on top of my project. And then I'll just take my finger and start rubbing that wet paper, and it will start to peel off. And you're just going to continue to do this until you feel like you've gotten most of the paper off. Now I'm just going to go in and trim the excess fabric and plastic off. And I'm going to leave a little bit of the fabric around the edges of the bunny. Now if you don't want to do the press and seal fabric technique that I did, you can just glue a paper bunny onto the front of your book if you'd like. I actually liked having the paper protected by this plastic, and I liked having it on the fabric as well. It just gave it a nice extra touch. So here I noticed there's still some paper on the bunny, so I'm just taking my thumb and I'm rubbing that paper off. And I wanted to make sure that plastic was really melted in. So I took another piece of paper, laid it on top, and then went over it again with my iron just to make sure that it was nice and adhered to the fabric. And here's the bunny all laminated into the fabric. So now I'll be using my Waverly antiquing wax, and I'll be using one of my sponges and wetting it down with a little bit of water. This just helps to thin out the wax a little bit. And I will go all around the edges of the fabric on my bunny. Once I get all the edges done, then I'll just kind of go over the whole bunny just to kind of make it look real vintage and old. And as I was playing with it, I felt a little bit more paper that was on there. So I just took my thumb and continued to roll it back and forth, getting all that paper off. All right, now I'm going to take that same sponge and I'm just going to go around the edges of the book, getting the edges nice and dark and then slowly blending it towards the middle. Here I'm just doing all the pages on the edges, adding a little bit of water so that it gives a light stain. And here's what it looks like with the stain on it. Now I'll be using some of this scrap lace. I've used this for many projects. That's why I like using old clothing or curtain panels for projects like this. You get a lot of fabric for a little bit of money. I picked this piece because it's see-through and I wanted to be able to see the printing from the book pages through the lace, just like this. I feel like this gives this project a little more interest. Now I'm just going to go in and start trimming up the lace around 3 of the sides. Now I did leave the lace a little bit longer where the book opens so that I can tuck it under here in just a little bit. But now I'm just going to start gluing my lace down on the front cover of my book using my rubber spatula so I don't burn my fingers. And now I'll just glue down both sides. Once I have them glued down, you can see now that I have this hangover of fabric in the opening part of the book. I'm just going to open up that top page and I'm going to start gluing some pages together. I like to glue about 4 to 5 pages together just to give it some stiffness. And then I'm going to open it back up and glue that page to the next page. And one more time, I'm going to open it up, add some glue, and press down, and that gives that front page a little bit of firmness. All right, now I'm just going to go in and cut up the excess lace around the edges except for the opening part. And here you can see I cut all the lace off all 3 sides. And I have that hangover on the opening part of the book. Now I'm just going to open that up, fold that lace over, and glue it down to those 4 or 5 pages that I glued together. And then once I do that, I'm going to add some glue to that page and fold it down onto the page in front of it so that you cannot see where I glued the lace down. And as you can see here, it's a nice finished look. I really love how you can see the print of the book behind the lace. Now we're going to work on the spine of the book. Now you can add just about anything you want here. I thought I would use this thick piece of lace because I like how it wrapped around the front of the book and also around to the spine of the book, giving the spine some detail. Here's another option. This is just a piece of Dollar Tree lace ribbon. So you can use any ribbon or lace and just glue it down the spine as well. This is the piece that I decided on. So I'm just going to glue it down and make sure that it's pushed on there nice and well with my rubber spatula. And then I'm going to glue this side as well. I love the detail of the lace against that brown plain paper. I'm just going to decide where I want to place my bunny, and then I'll just glue that down. Using my hot glue gun, I'll just go all around the edges and in the center of the bunny and press it onto the lace on the front of my book. I chose to put this little bunny kind of at an angle because the other book that I did, it was straight up and down. I thought a fun little detail would to be add a little ribbon tie to this book. So I'm opening the very front pages and the back pages, and I'm just going to glue some ribbon right to the inner part of the page. Here I'm doing that to the back as well, and then I will snip my ribbon and tie it in a nice little shoelace bow. Now for the fun part, we'll start decorating the front of our book, and I'm just finding some scrap pieces of lace and twine and drop cloth, anything I can find that I want to make a fabulous scrappy bow with. This is some vintage satin ribbon, and I'm just going to tie it in a little knot and cut it and use that as a bow instead of using the whole piece of ribbon. And then I'll just fray the edges of that satin to give it a worn vintage look. I'll get all those little scraps together, take a piece of extra lace, tie it in the middle into a knot, and then I have an adorable, fabulous scrappy bow. And I'll just go in with my glue gun and glue that down to the corner of my book, adding the satin bow right underneath it. And of course, those extra details are always important, so I'm going to add some pearls to the center of my bow. So I'm using 3 bigger pearls, and they are white. These are from the Dollar Tree. And then I have kind of a brown little pearl that I'm putting right into the center. And here is the book with the little bunny, and here is the other book that I did earlier with a picture of the big bunny. And here are some pictures of the finished project. And remember, it's all in the details to get that high-end look. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any fabulous DIYs.